Okay, the Zoom is open and Itumeleng, I don't know how to say their name, is in the waiting room. Um, Okay, got it.
I'll let everyone in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to another rendezvous here. Hello and welcome from Paris. Maybe to quickly start with, please, as usual, we ask you to turn off the mic so that we don't have interferences. Please add your names and your organization into the chat and also rename your name and organization basically on the photo, because this will be much easier for Lisa than to pin you if you intervene. And we love to know who's in the room, even if it's a virtual room. So please, if that's possible for you, put on your camera so that we can basically really enjoy our presence. So my name is Renadip. I'm heading the Renewables Secretariat here in Paris, and I really invite you to also introduce yourself basically in the chat, because all the things we're doing is also about building and strengthening the community of change makers to push the renewable agenda. So thank you very much for joining us today for our Global RENdez-vous Dialogue Series, where we're focusing this time on building resilient economies and societies with renewable energy. It's a series of 3 rendezvous. We had the first one last week where we were focusing on on the climate resilience. Next week we have one upcoming where we'll focus on the economic resilience. And today the topic is actually renewable energy for social and societal resilience. And I think this is really something important. Renewable energy is not built somewhere in where we don't see it. It's built close to people, it's built in nature. And we also all recognize that in a renewable-based energy system and economy, society, citizens, cities, communities have a real important role to play. They are not only consumers of energy, but they have very active roles. And I'm very excited that we have the opportunity to dive into this topic with some great speakers who will bring international basically different experiences from the world. Now, I do think when we are, last week, we really started unpacking what does resilience mean. And I think what is really important is it's very clear that we need strong, secure, and equitable economies and societies. And that this also comes with resilience and the capacity to adapt basically to a diversity of shocks, whether it is climate shocks, whether it is conflict, whether it is economic shocks. And I think this is really what is in the forefront of this discussion. So with the Global RENdez-vous Dialogues, we really have the space for open evidence-based discussions, but also for a diversity of voices coming from different stakeholders, different regions, and not only of people sitting here on the panel, but also all of you. So please be prepared to participate, ask questions in the chat, give comments, and don't hesitate to raise your hand if you want to join us here to participate actively in the discussion. I would like to really underline that I think in particular these days, it is really important with the current political economy we have that we really bring together our voices and that we have a collective push of our voices to ensure that change is still happening and continues to happen. So that's really why, from our side, it is, as I said before, not only a way to discuss things, but also to come together as change makers and build on the power of many. So today we'll explore renewables in building societal and social resilience and focus on the benefits renewables have for society and also the environment or nature. And maybe to end on this, REN1 has prepared during the last months a short series of knowledge briefs where we're specifically looking into the different resilience aspects. So don't hesitate to have a look, but also comment, give us feedback, share it, improve it, and so on. Now, let's directly dive into the discussion. I'm actually very happy to have Porfirio Jabla, who is a founding chairperson and managing director of Jamong Renewable Energy Development Group, and will give us some thoughts, actually, his thoughts and experiences, share some experiences from the Philippines. Thank you very much, Porfirio, to be with us, and especially at a late time of the day in the Philippines. So thank you very much. Porfirio, you're still muted. If you could please unmute. We really don't want to miss anything.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rana, and the rest of the REN21 team for inviting me here in this wonderful forum. I am asked to talk about the role of renewables in building social and societal resilience. I'll try my best. To begin with, allow me to start by talking a little bit about the situation in Mindanao, where I come from, the Philippines. When we started our work in off-grid communities years ago, the energy poverty context in Mindanao still exists today as it was 31 years ago when we at the Yamog Renewable Energy Development Group Incorporated began our advocacy to help off-grid communities in this third largest island in the Philippines. At that time, there was a terrible energy crisis in the 1990s, and it's really sad that even up to date, the government projects that beginning 2026, in fact, onwards, Mindanao will again experience a terrible energy shortage. In 1993, there were 1,432,866 households in this island in Mindanao that did not have access to electricity. So you multiply that by 5, which is the standard or average size of a family or household, and you get a staggering figure of how many individuals, men, women, children, did not have electricity at that time. But nothing much changed. As of 2024, last year, according to government figures, there are still 1,162,000 households without electricity access. The country is still increasingly dependent on fossil fuel. Mindanao is 70% reliant on fossil fuel, mainly coal. And more than half of the population is now under the poverty line, most of them living in rural areas. Social, mostly armed conflicts over natural resources, territory, and ideology still exist up to the present. So the goal that we defined years ago, which is really to set up micro hydropower and also solar power systems and other renewable energy systems in off-grid areas in Mindanao in a manner that would boost environmental sustainability and empower poor communities remains valid and relevant today. Mindanao has 8 major river basins with countless tributaries that are suited for a run-of-river microhydropower systems development that could generate 5 to 100 kilowatts. Harnessing these natural gifts through strong community participation enabled Yamog to improve the quality of life of thousands of otherwise neglected communities, mostly inhabited by indigenous people. Yamog's renewable energy development interventions provided many far-flung and isolated communities access to the basic essentials in life, like clean energy at the household level, clean energy at the community level, in schools, for example, post-harvest facilities operating this equipment, and other productive enterprises, including houses of worship. drinking water that needed to be pumped by electricity. And of course, a very important part of our work, the protection of forests and river ecosystems. More importantly, the local folks have succeeded in organizing themselves into cohesive social formations. What we call them energy users associations here. Or in case of the solar-driven water systems, the beneficiaries that we organize, we call them water users associations. And women production committees also, we organize them, and women health committees. All these social groupings were working because of the presence of renewable energy already in their communities. And these groups serve as effective vehicles for collecting or for collective planning, decision-making, problem-solving, and claim-making. Indigenous people of different stripes are recovering their senses of, or their sense of dignity and strengthening their culture as a result of their accomplishment in providing their own renewable energy systems. And young people who were erstwhile susceptible to joining armed groups are motivated to stay as productive members of their communities as a result of opportunities opened by the presence of clean electricity. And coupled with the emergence of a pool of community human capital made up of first and second line leaders that we trained over the years in various fields of management, many communities assisted by YAMOG are well on track, I would say, to becoming more resilient and confident in sustaining their initial gains. Even in fact, during the COVID-19 pandemic, this resilience really showed. The communities that we serve proved their capacity to go through that very terrible moment in our history as a result of having access to vital information, because there's electricity now already in the community. So they have access to information through radios, maybe TV, cell phones, and then this better access to information and better communication systems enable them to keep track of the developments outside their villages. And it was a wonderful thing to notice that I could not remember any of these communities affected by the COVID-19 virus at that time. So they were even, in fact, afraid of us going to their communities at that time. So there's this effect also on the carbon capture. We had an opportunity to work or be funded by the European Union in the last 4 years. And in the 7 municipalities and 5 provinces where we work, covering 116 far-flung villages, mostly indigenous communities, our computation is that we were able to, avoid, allow people to avoid carbon dioxide emission, because most of them, not really 100% yet, most of them have already access to micro hydropower and a little bit of solar power. So that's the effect also on the, the carbon, with regard to the carbon capture work. YAMOG's experience in renewable energy development, this is also a learning experience for us, actually. We have noticed after so many years that in building resilient communities, it also brought forth a realization that working towards a clean energy future is necessarily a multidimensional task. Given the lopsided socioeconomic and political realities in Mindanao, this task cannot be isolated from other dimensions that perpetuate poverty in rural communities. What I mean by this is that we discovered along the way, because we started with just a simple mission at the time to bring light bulbs to the houses in far-flung areas. But we noticed that it didn't have to end only in that, by achieving that objective. There's a lot more that we can do, actually. So that's what we realized. And so we pursued eventually a holistic and transformative and regenerative approach in relation to renewable energy development, so that in our minds, a truly just and equitable energy transition could be achieved. So in the course of our renewable energy development work, we learned that there are 3 dimensions at the community level that should be influenced and controlled, or if possible, owned by the marginalized people in their journey towards a clean energy future. One is community socioeconomic and political structures. Before, these structures were dominated by the usual, decision makers at the government level, maybe at the religious level sector, and maybe the educational sector. But with the formation of energy users associations, women's associations, indigenous people, youth indigenous peoples association that are already working towards clean energy transition, they were able to influence the old structures that used to make the decisions at the community level. So this is what we call recognition of justice. In fact, with this development, IPs, what we call IPs, indigenous peoples, are already recognized by local government units and other sectors as a very significant sector in their communities, because just come to think of it, they were able to develop a micro hydropower system in their midst. How could indigenous people do that? So other sectors, other structures, other social formations are forced in some ways to respect that. No? And women, participation of women, the acceptance that women have a proven capacity to play important roles in renewable energy development gained more traction over the years. And this is very significant, especially if you realize that these are traditionally male-dominated ethnic communities. Second, the dimension that I would cite here is the appropriate community social processes that ordinary folks, marginalized folks, people in off-grid areas should be able to control or influence at the least. No? So that's basically consultations, making them active participants in decision-making, in the conceptualization of projects, needs assessment, on everything in the project cycle. Whereas before, these people were just neglected people that others would think as, useless, so-called. So this particular dimension is what we call procedural justice. So this is one aspect of our work that just came out as we went, as I said, as we went through with our mission of developing primarily micro hydropower systems in off-grid areas in Mindanao. The final dimension that I would like to cite is access, ownership, and control over community asset base. So, these are mainly human capital, social capital, financial capital, physical capital, including natural capital. So human and social capital, we have been able to do that, to assist the communities in generating those assets. Financial capital, yes, because through the micro hydropower system, they are able to generate income from productive end uses driven by micro hydropower systems. And they generate savings because before they used to spend so much on kerosene for lighting. We even analyzed that based on our baseline data, each household would spend 300 pesos per month to 600 pesos per month to buy kerosene for lighting. That's before we came to their communities. But now all those expenses are practically wiped out because they are now given energy by the micro hydropower systems or solar power systems. So the most important one in this category, yes?
Porfirio, just to let you know, we're running beyond the time, so if you...
Yeah, I'll finish. I just
Thank you
finished.
so
This
much.
is
Really appreciate it.
that
It's
is-
really
this is
interesting.
what
I don't want to interrupt, but
yeah, this is what I refer to this third one as the distributional justice of our work. No? So to end this, I would say that all the aforementioned approaches and indicators of community resilience and empowerment were made possible by community scale, community managed, and nature-centric, we call it, run-of-river micro hydropower systems. There is definitely more to just providing electricity to households. So ultimately, in closing, I would say providing marginalized communities access to renewable, sustainable energy is not is actually also bringing hope. It is also about ushering in justice, as I mentioned, and most importantly, it is about restoring human dignity for people who, for many years, have been wallowing in energy deprivation. Thank you.
thank you so much, Porfirio. This was really, really interesting, and I think also very, very comprehensive. And we see that it's not only about energy and access to energy, but the whole governance and the empowerment around it. But it also means that, and I'm looking forward to discuss this with the panelists. And what do we also need to put in place so that these projects, energy projects and renewable energy projects, are really done in a good way, that all these positive benefits or these benefits are taking place. So I will bring you in later back to the panels when we have the Q&A session. Thanks a lot for sharing your insights. And I'm really happy to call our panelists here to the panel. Lilibeth Jimenez, who is a solar champion in Panama, and will share basically, she participated in the Solar Champion program for her community, Gobe Bouglé, and is going to share basically the insights from there. We have Itumeleng Morosele, who is a project manager at Sustainable Energy Africa, and Anna Samuel, who is joining us from Women Engaged for a Common Future, Georgia. We already heard in the discussion before that we have, there is a gender component to this too. So very much looking forward to the discussions. Now I'm just checking with the team whether Lilibeth is here, because she's not
Yes,
on our virtual panel. So
she has put her
Yes,
camera on,
I'm
so I
here.
probably
yes,
oh,
excellent. Hello, ladies, welcome. Very excited to have you with us. So I think we heard from Porfirio lots of benefits renewables can bring. And so obviously in terms of energy access, but also for people, the community, but also nature. And I think I would be really interested when we're thinking about advancing renewables. You see, we have a bit of, there is a certain urgency because there is a climate urgency. So there's sometimes something which is, we have a tension point between fast and fair, I guess. So I would be really, really interested to hear your thoughts about this. So how can we do this? And then also from your perspectives and your experiences, how do we also communicate basically the benefits of renewable energy to policymakers in a way that they really account for this when they're setting the basically policies and regulatory frameworks, and ensure that these projects are done in a good way? So who would like to start? Maybe Lilibeth. Why don't you start from your perspective?
Hello. Yes, good morning, everybody. My English is not very well, but I think I like the challenge.
Welcome. I'm sure that you will do well.
Yes. Okay. I think the benefits to the renewable energy is very important, but we need the advance is fair or rapid information. And I think the benefits for the people and the nature, because reduce the pollution, the renewable energy is a very few emission of greenhouse, and Another benefit is the energy security. Energy security is very important. We have the reliable and the constant supplies of energy so that our life and run smoothly. And the local economies development, for example, in the communities and the indigenous people, is renewable energy. The projects, for example, I participate in the solar program in Panama, and for the renewable energy is local economy development and the both economic of local community, especially in my areas, the rural areas. And another benefit for me is the preservation of natural resource is very important, but we need to accelerate this transition. Many people on before times announced, talk with some public police, the investment in research and development, universal access to energy is very important because the energy transition is the most inclusive and ensure access to clean, the affordable energy for all the people, is especially in the more vulnerable communities, and is very important with our here today is international cooperation. International cooperation is necessary because it's essential to accelerate the global energy transition, knowledge and technology. Yes.
Thank you so much, Lilibet. This was perfect. And I think it's really interesting to see how you're highlighting energy security and also local economic development. I think this is which also bridges basically to the series and the angle it has been brought up last week, but also next week. So we see it's cross-cutting. But also I think that's part of change is happening locally, but then it is we're speaking global issues. So Ichimiling, I would be curious to hear your view on this. With SCA, you're also working very closely with cities and communities. I think maybe also if you could also touch upon the question, how do we also ensure that these things are really visible in a way that they attract investment? Because ultimately we hear it's also about energy security and economic development.
Yeah, greetings to everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on the benefits of renewable energy to societies. I think in addition to what you said, Rena, about this drive to renewables being largely led or driven by the climate agency, but I think that it's also important to note that for developing countries especially, in addition to issues of energy accessibility, we also have the issue of affordability. So in a country such as South Africa with a 32% unemployment rate, it is no wonder that the majority of people cannot afford the rising costs of electricity. So there's a constant back and forth about rising tariffs, increasing tariffs. So it just really shows how renewables can, benefit a lot of the people, especially the underserved or marginalized communities that are largely unemployed. So I think it's really important to highlight how it's really beneficial for bridging that gap where a lot of people just cannot afford the price of electricity. And if we are not careful, and in the next few years, as prices continue to rise, more and more people will find themselves in energy poverty. And that is really what we are trying to work against. So I think in South Africa, what we've seen is how, municipalities have also government, let me just say government has, tried to like play a role in providing renewable energy solutions to households, especially those that are not connected to the municipality's grid. So we found that there has been a rollout of what's been called solar home systems to communities that are currently not connected to the grid. I think what's interesting is also that in as much as the government has done quite a lot in trying to electrify millions of households post-apartheid, there's still about 14% of households that are still not connected to the electricity grid. So that's where renewables really come in, and where they are beneficial in, providing those solutions, although interim, but, just giving people that dignity of having access to lighting, for instance, and having, electricity to charge phones or get some lighting, which is really like quite basic, but also very important for everyone. And I think just to touch on your last point about how I think we can start to attract investment into these community projects or renewable energy in communities is, firstly, I think it's important to define what community-owned renewable energy looks like in the context of different countries, because there is no one-size-fits-all approach. What works in the global north definitely doesn't work in the global south. And even in the global south, it's different from country to country, So it's really quite important to actually sit down and think, with the resources that are available, what is it that communities can do, And once we've come up with what it is that we are trying to achieve, and then try to influence policy or try to get frameworks in place that support this end goal that we are trying to get to. And then it just makes the whole thing a bit easier, because then we know what would work best in a particular country or a particular area. So it's really just, I find that it's really just defining what a community participation in renewable energy looks like in each and every different context, and what needs to be done in order to get to that place. So whether policies, legislation, and then once we can work out it's the term bankable is what's usually used, but how to come up with solutions or plans that are likely to get people wanting to be involved in them, So it really starts with defining what community participation, the ultimate community participation, looks like in different contexts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This already, I think like underlining the fact that the solutions are not one size fits all. I would even say, like, even in the, in the global north, from one country to the other, and probably also one community to the other, you'll have quite differences. So I think that's really important to underline. So Anna, let me turn to you. What is the situation in Georgia? Because you might also bring in this part, but also you have a specific lens looking at it also from a gender perspective. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much. And hello from Georgia. Indeed, the energy transition and access to energy is not gender neutral. Women and men use energy in different ways. They have different needs, and also energy poverty tends to affect women more than men. So it's very important to pay attention to. The household is not a black box. There live women and men who have different roles and different ways of dealing with energy. In Georgia, we have cold winters, so apart from the question of having electricity, which most of the households have, there's also the question of heat. Women tend to spend more time indoors, and in rural areas, houses are heated with firewood. That causes a lot of indoor air pollution. They are using inefficient, not very well designed stoves, wood stoves, so all the smoke is coming in. I know it's also a problem in countries of the global south, but here again, women and children are the ones affected most, and also the ones that need to sit at the table if we want to introduce a change. They are the key agents here, and often, unfortunately, they are forgotten, especially at the higher levels. Yeah, the houses here are also energy inefficient, so there's a lot to gain in terms of energy poverty with improving insulation energy efficiency, in addition to more energy efficient stoves and the using of solar water heaters for warm water, for improving the room temperature. As for the question of how to get it to the government, it's important to recognize the barriers, especially well, from our perspective, barriers for women to sit at the table. There are regulatory barriers. At the moment, we are experiencing a crisis in democracy, but I won't take away the time for this, although it does affect a lot. The financial barriers women are experiencing, there's still the pay gap. Women have less possibilities to invest, although they might have other priorities than men. And this results in higher energy bills. We already heard about that often women will have to pay from their household budget, and more poverty. There's the care burden, lack of access to information, different mobilities, and the structural burdens that women still are underrepresented in all decision-making bodies, basically on local level and national level, and in all the especially in technical fields and energy fields, women are underrepresented. They structurally suffer from time poverty. They are the traditional gender roles that keeps them at home and away from decision-making opportunities. So it's important to address these barriers when we do any energy interventions, and we have to make sure that women and men benefit equally.
Thank you so much. I think it's really interesting, but we hear like affordability, right, is a big topic everywhere. I think it's also, it's really interesting to see that in this context, you speak about energy efficiency and renewable energy together, so they need to go hand in hand. But then I also think this part of, you see, affordability of participating in decision-making to a certain extent, you see from the different players is interesting. I think like maybe that's a follow-up question to you, Anna. Why do you think that a gender component is necessary in the energy transition? Because sometimes we have this, yes.
Well, it has been proven, so many researchers have shown that projects that actually take into account a gender component are more likely to achieve their goals and objectives. So it's been proven, and this is because without involving women, we cannot achieve lasting change on community level. I think previous speakers can only confirm that. Yeah, because women are key players, and also the policy on the policy level, women have to be involved to get the gender perspective. If you come in with a solution and you don't ask women, it will not work. It will not be accepted. And another thing why it's important to involve women from the early stage, in Georgia, we have the low emission development plan, which envisions a lot of industrial changes and technological renewable energy projects. And it also projects that 80% of these jobs will go to men, and only 20% of these newly created jobs will go to women. And here, this is clearly not a solution, and this has to be addressed at an early level.
Thank you. I'll just and thank you so much. I'll build on this directly and come to you, Lilybeth, because I know that with the Solar Champion program, I think this is specifically focusing and targeting women and women involvement and economic opportunities for women too. So I would like to hear your perspective on the role of women. But then also more specifically, I think you spoke very much about the local communities. And the question to you, how can local communities be better integrated into decision making, and in particular also indigenous communities?
Sorry, repeat your question.
Yes. So Anna spoke about the fact that in Georgia, the experience was that with jobs, 80% were going to men and 20% to women. I know that you have been part of a program with a Solar Champion that was specifically focusing and targeting women, and also the development of economic opportunities for women. So if you could share some experiences. But then also the role of involving local communities and indigenous communities in decision making.
Yes, thanks for your question. For me, it's very important. For example, in Panama, normally the work in the local work is many men, no women, and these projects is the opportunity for the women indigenous people, because it's possible the opportunity with the job creation, because the renewable energy sector creates a new jobs in Panama, and it's possible offering women employment opportunities, and others benefits for the woman is entrepreneurships, because women can start their own business, and in the renewable energy sectors, and it's possible también panels or producing biofuels, and then generates income to improve their economy autonomy. And indigenous people in Panama is vulnerable, and many people's not access to energy, and the renewable energy is the most option for ours. It's possible as access to basic service for ours, and it's possible we need conserve the natural resources, and we need clean energy, and we need the education and training, because many people or the governments many projects, because we need the training. We need the training before that. I think with the participation indigenous community, if develop renewables energy for the first stars, we need the free, pure, and informed consent, because with our culture is not similar with another people in the city. And the social participation of indigenous communities in the development of renewable energy requires a holistic approach that combines technical, social, cultural, and environmental aspects by respecting the rights of community, empowering and ensuring that benefits are distributed equally. And we need share benefits. The share benefits is important with the communities participate because the economic and social benefits of project must be distributed fairly community members, and the positive impacts because this contribute the improving the quality of life of community. For example, through job creation, improved to access basic service is necessary for ours, and environment protection. And we need many people talk with many projects, but because indigenous peoples we have the role important in the create this project, because it is necessary respect for traditional language is important, because the project traditional language of indigenous is possible a relationship with the environment, and it's a challenge and opportunity with this topic. It's a challenge and is many opportunities, but it's possible when the participation of indigenous and community with the renewable energy requires holistic, and the combines technical is not how do you say, and the conflict of interest is not necessary. It's not necessary in this. We need the together work for this renewable resource and transition energy. We don't need together is conflicts, and the power inequalities is the companies and governments needs to address. And for me, in the champion for the solar champion in Panama, is now I'm here with many different peoples to different country, and is opportunity. And we need the training, we need studies every day for this topic, and we need together working for this and in the future we need the energy transition is good, but we not working together is very challenging, or is not possible.
Thank you so much, and thanks a lot for bringing the energy, you see, like, and your enthusiasm over to us. You see, also, if I know that you said like your English is not good, we can really send this. And I think there is one part which I would like to build upon, because I think this point which you highlighted, we need the stories, we need the people, but also this interconnection of many of the local great activity that are happening and the empowerment that is happening is like, how do we basically all bring this together to have the voice outside? But then, and I'll build on a question that came in from Justine, maybe, to all of you, because I think it's really echoing a question I was going to ask you is, how do we actually, so the question's like, what policy frameworks do we need and would enhance the role of renewables in social and societal well-being, but also this really acknowledging for the fact that resilient societies is resilient economies, and is security ultimately. I would be curious to hear, because that's necessary for scaling up. So maybe Itumeleng, let's start with you. What policy framework do you help here? Or do they help?
It's quite broad. I think I should start off by maybe explaining the project that Sustainable Energy Africa has been involved with for community-owned renewable energy. So the organization has been working with another South African-based organization to basically assist 3 communities in South Africa to actually look into the ownership of renewable energy assets for the community's benefit. So it's just really looking at the different modalities that are out there and the different ways that communities can go about owning renewable energy, and also looking at how it's going to benefit our communities like at large. So in terms of policies, it is quite a broad question, but I think a government as a whole, starting from national right up to a local, there really has to be a commitment to going the renewable energy route. So doing away with the way things are going currently. So it really starts with a commitment right from the top to actually assist in trying to move away or being really, like I said, committed and dedicated and trying to find ways to phase out this heavy reliance on fossil fuels, And what I've seen, what I would say best practice from countries that have done this is in terms of policies that they have managed to put in place. So in communities that have managed to get their own renewable energy assets, and say, for instance, they have a solar plant that they as a community are owning. So this is based on countries mostly from the global north. So communities have come together as cooperatives, and they own a particular solar plant, for example. And they then sell this electricity to the municipality or a government institution. So in order for that to be done, there had to be policies in place, like how exactly does that work? How does it benefit the person who's selling the electricity, for instance? So this export of electricity or the selling of electricity from a community to a municipality or whoever, or a private buyer. So that obviously requires a lot of policies that have to be put in place, and those usually come from the government. So like I said, either from national or local. So that's what I've seen that has worked from other countries. But then in the South African context, I would say that we have what is called free basic electricity, and then it's a policy, and then there's also what has been implemented, which is free basic alternative electricity, and that's a policy that was also put in place for all the households that are perhaps not connected to the grid and are not electrified. So looking at what other alternatives there are. So like solar home systems. So it's really, it just comes from a drive or a commitment that government has to electrify, especially those that are underserved or, marginalized. So it's such really policies, I would say, that come in place right from the top that I've seen that have worked outside of South Africa, and these ones that I've just mentioned that have been put in place in South Africa. And of course, there's a lot more that can be done. There's a lot more that can be done, and this is why exchanges such as these are important, to hear what other people have done in their own countries, and trying to see if what can be modified and how that could potentially be implemented in our country, for instance. But over to other people. That's the best way I can think about policies that could help with the uptake of renewable energy.
Thank you. Anna, a similar question to you, and then also please raise your hand so that you can join the panel here. But Anna, I would like, so what policies not only to support renewable energy, but actually to support the societal and social benefits of renewable energy? And don't hesitate to have the wish list. So we're interested in what is existing, but what do we need more?
Yeah, we do need we need a system change basically to divest from the fossil fuels, where still much more government subsidies are spent on renewables. Sorry, a lot going on. So we need accessible funding for grassroots organizations for renewable projects. There is still a lack of funding, and the big climate funds are mostly accessible to big organizations, GIZ or the big development banks, and their implementation is also questionable. And yeah, we already discussed how important community participation, grassroots women's participation is. We also need intersectional policies and intersectional perspective when we talk about the just transition. I'll keep it with that.
Okay.
If that's
Thank you. I think it's very good to highlight the financial part, and to some extent it also echoes, Lily, what you said. You see, like on the part of linking basically the local and community to the global space. Itumeleng, you have your hands up.
Yes, if I may, I've just thought of something else that I thought is also quite important, quite crucial, is awareness building and the capacitation of communities on renewable energy. And this is also a way to open up dialogues between decision makers and communities, and to make sure that people that are on the ground also get to participate in decisions that impact their lives. So I would say that spreading the awareness, information on renewable energy, making sure that as many people as possible are reached with the message of renewable energy, and what skills are required from communities to help them participate. Because I think it's very important to remember, to keep in mind that educating people about why renewables are a good idea, for instance, and how they stand to benefit them as communities is actually quite important. So instead of trying to come up with solutions as decision makers at the top and trying to bring them down to communities without doing the communication, and it's actually good to come up with solutions right from the start with these affected communities. So go through the entire process with the people, right from educating them, spreading the awareness, and then moving together towards finding solutions or making decisions. So that's just something that I wanted to share, the importance of building awareness and capacitating or upskilling communities to make sure that they can actually participate in renewable energy uptake. Thank you.
Thank you so much for adding this. Porfirio, why don't you join us here on the panel? And now a question to the audience. Anybody would like to join us here to ask a question, contribute your views? Please put your hands up and we'll bring you here.
Yeah, if I may.
Yes, please go ahead, Porfirio.
Discussion regarding investments. This for us is a bit of a complicated issue to even ponder in the context of the Philippines. Anyway, to really come up with a sound approach in relation to this question, I think we have to have a very clear understanding of how the energy sector of each country is being arranged or disarranged. Like, for example, in the Philippines, the energy sector here is that it is broken into three parts. So there are groups or companies, big companies that are involved in generation. There's another group, actually it's a monopoly now, or a big company that's involved in transmission. So the generation, they pass it on to this transmission company, and the transmission company will pass it on to the distribution utilities, or what we call here the electric cooperatives. And the electric cooperatives are the ones who are, connecting the wires to the households, to the industries, those hospitals, etc. So that's how it works. So to promote renewable energy, one would imagine why not big companies should, pour money directly into renewable energy. In the context of the Philippines, it's a bit difficult because of this arrangement, this compartmentalization of the supply chain of energy. The distribution utilities, which are the end part of that supply chain, would say, well, we cannot go as far as those areas that are penetrated by Yamog because it's very expensive. We have to set up all those lines, the electric post. It takes us maybe 5 million pesos for 1 hectare of electric line. So it doesn't work like that in the Philippines. So what we did is that on our own, the energy sector, the NGOs like us, decided to do it on our own, developing microgrids. While our logic is why allow people, why let people wait for so long until the grid comes to the people in off-grid areas. But really, direct investments from the companies is not, I think, viable right now to promote renewable energy, especially in off-grid areas where access is very problematic. I'm seeing, the investments or the funds coming in through bilateral or multilateral organizations. Like, for example, in the Philippines, you have a lot of organizations, the EU that I mentioned a while ago, the World Bank, the USAID, ADB, UN, in fact, they pour in a lot of money, supposedly to influence our local government to venture into more renewable energy development. So they go through the government channels. Rarely do they go through
the community channel, you mean?
To the community channels or NGO level. We were just lucky 4 years ago when the EU funded us, NGOs. And it's not really to to toot our own horn, but after the evaluations that they made, EU and all these other agencies, they found out that the projects implemented by NGOs like us, I'm not bragging, were the ones more successful in meeting the objectives of the renewable energy-led projects as compared to the projects made by the government sector. So what is it? I am saying that in terms of the question of policy, maybe REN or other networks can influence these big organizations. We can say that, hey, EU, ADB, etc., if you pour billions of money to countries like etc., like that, why don't you do it like this? Really do an honest, hard-nosed work to promote renewable energy, follow through on their commitments of these governments in the SDG, their SDG commitments, and consider the role of non-state players like the NGOs like us, because we are capable of extending renewable energy to areas where the state players could not reach or would not opt to go. So
I think that's sorry, I'm jumping in because we have a question of Justine, and I really would like to get the audience on board. But I think I have this as a takeaway and probably also task back to many of the players. Is like collecting these great stories, but also good data on this to make it visible, to show how much is happening. I recall that, for instance, I think a colleague of yours, Iti Milling, had mentioned that in South Africa, we have like installation of 250 megawatt, more or less per month, actually, of isolated solar PV. Because people cannot afford to connect to the grid, and there is lots of developments here. And I think by making it visible, it will be much easier to also lobby and influence the international finance world. So, Justine Wanye, you had a question on national food security. Would you like to join us here? So we'd love to bring you here to the panel. Silence. So I'll just read your question out. How could renewables strengthen national food security? Anybody who would like to take this question? And please don't be shy. We're not going to bite you, especially not in a virtual space. So join us here if you have some ideas, thoughts, questions. So question to our panels, to our panelists. How could renewables strengthen national food security? Do you have any views on this?
Well, I could give some examples. We've been working with solar food dryers, which preserves food which normally just goes to waste. They are accessible and easy to use, and again, it's mostly women. They make small business, but also improve the family food security. And yeah, that can be upscaled, and there are many good examples of ways that renewables can be used to preserve and produce more food. But maybe other panelists can add as well here.
Thank you, Anna. I think that's interesting because it's along the whole food chain, right? And we have like the cooling, I think in many warmer developed countries is extremely important. Are there other experiences specifically on the food energy synergies, I guess?
Yeah, I can say again, in our experience, based on our experience at the grassroots level, like micro level, like for example, our micro hydropower systems, they are available and they have enough electricity to drive, what we call productive end uses. For example, corn mills and rice mills and other post-harvest facilities that generate food for the community. Then because of that, there's income, additional income, maybe a little bit of employment generation too. And because of that, the community is motivated to plant. So for example, so we have a corn mill, so many are motivated to plant corn. We have a rice mill, many are motivated to plant more rice. Because in our situation, the milling sites are so very far away from the communities. They have to spend a lot of money to bring the harvest to the centers to have them milled. So this chain reaction of providing the basic post-harvest machineries driven by renewable energy could motivate farmers to produce more for food at the community level. This is only at the grassroots community level, but the same concept can be scaled up. In our minds, we are trying to do it at the municipal level, bigger, scale it up, and hopefully to the provincial level. So the same. Actually, it's just common sense. You have renewable energy, why not use it for a lot of productive end uses, we call. For example, there's a new project that we have. Again, a micro hydro project. It's only 15 kilowatts, benefiting more than 200 households, indigenous communities as well. But the idea came when the people themselves discussed that why not come up with a poultry project? And I noticed that why poultry and renewable energy? So I found out later that when the chickens hatch those eggs, they needed a lot of bulbs and, light to make the reproduction more, feasible for the community. So again, the connection of renewable energy and egg production, that's food for the community and income as well, because they are having a surplus now, they are selling it outside their communities. So these are the things that are possible.
Thank you. This is really, really helpful. So the whole processing part and the opportunities, and maybe I'll just add one aspect which we heard from. I find this really interesting. Is like in Nigeria, building on this, where basically the Rural Electrification Planning Organization or Authority had actually really built on this and looked at where do we have like economic activities you see in terms of agriculture activities. How do we bring water pumping, etc., into those? Because this is going to increase the yield of the production, but where there was very clearly also the strategic planning, actually, that this would also give economic opportunities for people to stay in the rural areas, which is important for the food security. Happy with this line of thought. Miguel, why don't you join us here? We have 5 minutes left, but if you are quick, then you can join us. Okay, you're muted. So, Miguel, you're muted. You're muted. We cannot hear you, Miguel.
Do you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, you are doing just the opposite of what I was trying to do myself. I was sending you a short message that we could discuss this if you wish offline, because the inherent problem with civil society is that it is very heterogeneous and therefore not that easy to approach, at least in many countries. And therefore, we could noodle this a little bit through bearing in mind such diversity on the one hand, and on the other hand, the question I think we need to address is that as we are dealing with these issues at a more global level, the question is what can be addressed at the policy level, where with one bang you can reach a wider set of participants. That is the advantage of dealing through a vehicle like REN21. So I felt a little bit out of my field, particularly in a country like Chile, where we have been quite successful at the policy level, at the big bang type of action, and notoriously unsuccessful at dealing at the local, at the indigenous levels, etc. So, in other words, what I was going to tell you was this is very complex, and certainly for a group like this to deal and come up with crystal clear solutions. This is awfully complex. It's awfully diverse, and what is true in Panama is not true in Chile, and certainly even within Chile, we have 7 different areas which are notoriously different from each other. There are elements where one can see certain areas of potential success, but they are very different from the way we ought to approach them. So it's I'm afraid that I'm confusing more the subject and not helping you at all.
But I think that Anna
not helping you because the issue itself is complex, no?
No, but I think it's a very valid point, and I see, Anna, you have some thoughts on this, so please.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. But maybe we can agree that there are some elements that can be that are universally, and that is the intervention should always be community-based and a needs assessment, and intersectional, gender-sensitive needs assessment should be conducted before any energy intervention that targets everyone that will be affected. I think that could be a general rule, and there has been done a lot of research and development cooperation to showcase this kind of approach. And a lot goes wrong, but in development and energy and climate projects, but as the general rule, to involve the stakeholders. And how that is another question we maybe discuss another time. But this involvement, I would say it's a kind of a general thing. And I think all the other speakers have highlighted that there are solutions. Communities are doing great things, and they can be upskilled. And the civil society does play a key role in many of the innovations taking place. And yes, we need the banks, we need the big money and the policy changes.
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm very happy to hear this, and I would like, we're running out of time, but I think I'll build one of the topics. I think or your remark is, there are principles we can streamline, and I think all of you have touched upon some principles, and so I think this is one part. It's very clear, and that's certainly something from, you see, where there will be follow-up. You see, what are some of these principles and what does this mean in terms of policy recommendations, but also making things visible. I think, Porfirio, you had a clear ask, how do we then reach this to the larger, more global investors and development banks? And then the other part is, it's very clear that all the valuable insights and experiences you have, we will need to continue the discussion and also build on your experiences, your voices, to get basically the messages out, show the diversity, but also work on the common pieces so that we can basically have very clear messages to policymakers. We're at the end, we're beyond the time. I would like to thank all of you actually for sharing your insights. We will follow up with the panelists, but also the audience. So it's not a topic which we are only kicking off like this. And if you would like to dive more into this topic, please have a look at I think the resilience briefs. Join us next week for the discussion on the economic resilience. Follow, Lilybeth, I just see you have your hand up, so I'll just take the extra minute for you to jump in. Sorry for that.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. For this topic is very important now for our planet, and we need the effective communication with together, and the plain language, and the communities peoples is not in last. The project is, we need the stars and the process, and for me is, I enjoy here, and for me, I thank you so much for the participate.
Hello.
And we need work together. And we need the coalition and alliances for the organization and company, and our message is the pleasure for the many projects.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Lily, for underlining the importance also again of the community, and glad that you could join us here. So I'll also end. Have a look at two reports. They are a bit older, but I think they are still relevant. The Renewables in Cities Global Report, where we're really diving at the city level to show some of the great things happening there. So I think this is also a way of streamlining it. And the other part, which is something we did specifically on Mexico, looking at how to build in community energy pieces into the policies, national policies, tendering. I think it would be interesting to have follow-up discussion to see how we can basically build on this. Part 3 of the Rendezvous series is happening next week on 4th of February at the same time, 3 p.m. CET, and we're going to dive into renewables for economic resilience. And Yeah, I think we'll see that there is lots of connection to some of the topics we've discussed today. Thanks again to all of you for participating, and looking forward to see you next week. Bye.
Bye.